I'm Theron Ramacharaka. Now, I'm going to do a little something a little bit different than usual here in this video. I'm going to recount a recent personal experience to you that involves someone else. And I'm going to use that experience to exemplify something that I think is important to point out. It's something not too foreign to most people's ideologies anyway. But it's something good to hear about from time to time in life. All right. This has to do with, I don't know, you could call it positive thinking, as in you can't afford the luxury of a negative thought. Could also be called we play a large role in creating the circumstances that we find ourselves in. We could also go a little bit deeper and refer to thought forms and their actions. Depends on what level we want to look at this at. But I don't want to single this person out entirely, but I'm kind of going to have to, because it's a perfect example of what I'm trying to get at here. Okay. Look. For the past, 8 or 9 months, I've been employed in a company. I'm not going to name the company, all right? But my boss has been in the practice of being quite verbally abusive. Now, he seems to have been taking me or perceiving me pretty much from the start as somebody who's up to something. Now, I'm not up to anything on the job except practicing what I preach here in my channel. Doing the very best work I can do in the circumstances that I'm given, regardless of how I feel about the day, or regardless of, whether my boss is currently angry with me over something or whatever. No, I do what I do the best that I can do it, as a service to humanity, out of a sense of duty to the cosmos, and let the chips fall where they may. I'm not out to rip anybody off. I'm not up to something. I have no hidden agendas. I don't do that. I look out for the best of my boss's intentions, or what I take them to be, what's best for the company I work for, what's best for, the results of the job itself, for the customer. Ultimately, I'm just doing it out of a sense of duty, doing all of that out of a sense of duty to the universe, That's all. Duty to universal will. But I have been perceived by my boss as somebody who's probably quite slippery, me, and probably up to no good somehow, and just having no concern or no concept that time is money, and just like I'm a total screw up. And it's not true. These things are not true. Other people who I work with have just kind of scratched their heads over why in the world my boss would, talk like this about me, think like this about me. They see my work. They know that it's good work. But I have been told time and time again, that by my boss, that he has no idea, what to do with me. He can't make money with me because I work too slow. But look, everybody I work with, who I talk to about this, with frequently, acknowledge our boss makes bad business decisions. He does not know what he's doing with a lot of the services that his company provides. I was hired to paint, largely. Well, he doesn't know how to bid painting jobs. He gives me jobs to do that should take maybe 4 or 5 days for one person and wants them done in 2 days. And it's not possible. It's not possible. And he, when it does take longer, he claims that, I cause him to lose money and then I'm slow and that he doesn't know what to do with me and that I'm kind of like a waste of resources. And when he wants to know what's taking so long, and I look at him like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Something taking so long. Nothing's taking so long. But so then I try to explain what's going on, and he tells me that he's never heard such bull crap in all of his life, and just on, and with insinuations that I'm useless to him, and that he's about to get rid of me, and on, and then maybe for a couple of days he's real nice and points out that sometimes he goes overboard or he acts like somebody with severe mood changes or whatever. And then he's right back to it again, and it's unnerving, folks. And the thing I'm trying to get to here is that I eventually decided I need to get another job for various reasons. One, I don't need to live with the stress of not knowing whether I'm going to have my job the next day, over some whim or some fanciful idea that my boss comes up with that, well, today it's time to fire so-and-so, me. Right? I don't need that. That's very unnerving, unsettling, right? And number two, he seems very dissatisfied with me. Like I'm doing him no good, so why shouldn't I go look for another job? Go someplace where I'm more needed. And there are other reasons. All related reasons. Now, at the same time, you see, a few months back, my boss fronted me the money to get a vehicle because I was having some transportation difficulties. And he expected that this vehicle, that there would be kind of like what we would call a lien on the vehicle. And I agreed with this idea, and that I would pay him out of my paychecks. Well, the title for the vehicle finally came through, and it came to me with my name on it, and his not on it at all. So really, all that's left is he has no control over the vehicle. I just owe him money. That's the way it worked out. At the same time that the title was arriving in the mail, before I realized I even had it, I had got hired somewhere else. And I went and I told my boss about it. I tried to be upfront with him, give him foreknotice that I had been employed somewhere else, and immediately he wanted to confiscate my vehicle. He became very irate. Very irate. It ends up, he fired me. With no reason given, other than he was just angry. Angry that I went and got another job while I owe him money, and I'm not going to, go hand my title over to him. When he was trying to take the truck from me that I need to be able to work, no matter who I work for. And working for him, he had already made clear to me many times was not something that was to his advantage at all. Now, my point is, oh, one last thing. When he fired me, which was today, I told him, well, he wanted to know, what about the vehicle? What am I going to do about the vehicle? He wants the vehicle. He wants the title. He wants the keys. He wants something. Well, I'm not going to give it up. It's my vehicle. I own it. I owe him money, but I own the vehicle. And I need it for work. That's the point of having it. Really. But I'm going to pay him. It's just the way I am. I'm going to pay him. He did not believe me. He emphatically stated, I'm not going to use the same language that he used, but he said over and over, very emphatically, look, when it comes to thought forms and mental images, I could perceive, in whatever way it is that, I can perceive such things, very strong mental images and very decided ideas in his mind, corresponding with his words, that I have already screwed him over. And that is why I no longer am employed by him. Now, no longer being employed by him does not help. I have a couple of weeks here between now and when I start my new job. No income now. How does that help him get his money that I owe him? It doesn't. It does no good. It doesn't help him. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help the situation at all. And he's already decided, he repeated, maybe, 6 or 7 times that I just screwed him over. I've done no such thing. How could I have? He's been taking money out of my paychecks automatically. That's been a regular thing since the vehicle, was purchased. And just today he fired me. And there's still a paycheck coming, which he's going to keep, he says. So how have I screwed him out of anything? Now, if in the future I don't pay him, then yeah, that's what'll be. That would be the case. I would be screwing him out of the money I owe him. But that hasn't happened. But he's decided that it's already a done deal, a foregone conclusion, that my act of getting hired somewhere else, regardless of his actions that he has taken over the last 8 or 9 months to push me in that direction, okay, to bring that about, regardless, right? My actual getting hired somewhere else is me screwing him out of his money. Like that's a done deal. Made him so angry he fired me. Which doesn't help him. Now, what's my point? My point would be very clearly stated to him, it would have been clearly stated to him, had I said something like his name, and then, you sure are talking like you are begging the entire universe to set up the circumstances to make what you think is going to happen. You've already decided that that's the way it's going to turn out, as though it already has. And I could have also pointed out, to go along with it, that the very fact that I went and got another job is the result of him being kind of the same way ever since I've been hired. In other words, the circumstances that he thinks he sees coming about right now are the results of his former actions. And if he keeps this up in this emphatic manner, this highly negative perception of affairs, he could help bring about the circumstances for him to never get paid by me at all. I mean, he even had it figured out how it was going to happen, that I would never pay him. That I'll start my new job, and then, for in a couple of weeks it won't work out, and then I'll be trying to collect unemployment, and I'll be, I'll make a couple of payments and then forget about it, or just not have the money, or, go on unemployment, He knows how it's all going to work out. Well, for God's sakes, I wanted to say, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Now I have to work double time in my mind here, thinking the opposite of all of that, by affirming the opposite, right? And trying to just put out of my mind everything you just said, just to kind of balance all that shit out, right? Because, he was laying out some real negative stuff. And in my opinion, if any of that comes about, it'll be related to him being so convinced that that's the way it's going to go. Yeah, but I know this too, from other conversations with him in the past, when I have talked to him about creating self-fulfilling prophecies with me. He had no idea what I was talking about. Never heard of such a thing. Took it that I was trying to play a mind game with him when I talked to him once about, please stop talking in a manner that's going to create circumstances that you don't want to have happen, which has happened in the past. In the form of, he would, keep talking about, me screwing things up that I wasn't screwing up, to the point where I started screwing them up because I was so worried about him thinking I'm going to screw something up. Well, I eventually started screwing up a couple of things in exactly the manners that he was accusing me of doing all along, when in fact I hadn't been. Then when it would finally happen, after all this negative input in those directions, it would finally come about, like a self-fulfilling prophecy that he had created, then he would take that as proof that he'd been right all along. This is entirely frustrating and stressful. It's a stressful way to be employed. And things like this all led to me seeking employment elsewhere, which now, of course, as you're getting the picture, he's taking as a further sign that even more catastrophic things are going to happen to him. To him. All around him, With me being at the helm, trying to ruin his life. The furthest, that's, nothing could be further from the truth. But my point, once again is, creating self-fulfilling prophecy is one way to look at it. Another way is, be careful. Here's my point to you guys. The events with him that I'm pointing out are a very clear example of how we create circumstances in our lives and don't realize it. I don't think he realizes he does that. He doesn't. I think he has yet to learn what a self-fulfilling prophecy means. What that phrase even means. Let alone the inner workings of such a thing. The inner workings like you and I here know. If you've been tuned to the material here in my channel and in, my more active involvement playlists here, personal involvement playlists and whatnot here. You know, it's another example here. It's another way of saying be aware of what you're thinking. Be aware of the thought forms you're creating. Be aware of what it is you are asking for, what it is you are expecting. Now, here's another good lesson about that. I used to think to myself, why should I think positively? I'm thinking realistically. This is, a former version of me, I guess you could call it. Let's say me 15 years ago. I used to think to myself, why should I think positively? I'm thinking realistically. And I'm sure that if I said anything to my boss, my former boss, about, his negative idea, like, why don't you just trust me? Why don't you just, have some belief that I'm going to pay you? Stop all of this extremely negative talk like it's already a done deal that he's been completely screwed out of a few $1,000s by me just because I got hired somewhere else. He would say, what are you talking about? What do you think, I'm stupid? This would be his response. This is why I didn't say anything. I've been down this road with him before about lesser things. What do you think, I'm stupid? Think I was born yesterday? God, what are you? You've got no common sense. Common sense will tell you that you're not going to pay me. I've been around the block more than once, buddy. That would be his kind of response. Well, I used to think similarly, folks. I used to think I'm just being realistic. I'm thinking from experience. Why should I think any differently? Repeated experience over and over is what got me to thinking like this. That used to be the way I thought about it. But people sometimes would say, have you ever considered that the way you think about things is playing a role in the outcome? And I could not see that. All I could see is that I used to be much more positive and other people did it to me. Other people screwed me over so much. Other circumstances came in and slowly whittled me down to this more realistic point of view that I now have, which is very negative. So there's no way, no. I am not creating the circumstances. The circumstances are creating my point of view and have been for quite a while. I've been living my life. I've watched it happen. That would be my answer. That used to be my answer. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is because maybe you have been in the same situation. Maybe you have been on, either side of the table with this, the negative thinker, the so-called realistic thinker, or the person who has been having all of this negative stuff poured at you by somebody else who considers themselves to be the realistic thinker. Or maybe you're going through some of it right now. I don't know. This is why I said, earlier in this video, sometimes we all need to be reminded of things like this for whatever reason. It's not like, I'm expecting that this is any groundbreaking information here in this video. No. It's nothing earth-shattering. Well, it is very realistic, as you no doubt know, to think much, much, much more positively about affairs. No matter how many times the outcome has not worked the way you wanted. There are so many wrong things about the point of view that my boss was taking. So many. We could talk about it from the level of thought forms. We could talk about the psychological effects on the person. We could talk about the psychological effects it has on other people around. My goodness, we could talk about it in so many ways. We could talk about cause and effect. We could talk about mental attraction. We could, geez. We could just go on and on about just how many ways. That is just very destructive thinking. And it does affect circumstances. Common sense itself, realistic thinking says, think more positively no matter what. For so many reasons. It's just amazing to see somebody convinced that the whole world is against them all the time. And some of the best people that they could ever have surrounding them in their lives get pushed away because of it. Because everything some of the best people do with this person get filtered, cognitively filtered through this cognitive, get perceived through this cognitive filter that turns everything just into something bad. They can't even see the good. They don't think it's going to happen. They don't expect it. And it doesn't happen for them. Imagine how much I really felt like paying this guy back after hearing him swear up and down it's never going to happen. That even it had an impact on the sincerity of my intentions. It really did. Oh, I'm still going to pay him back, but I'm not going to do it very happily. It's going to seem like a real grind now because I know that the guy is expecting I'm never going to do it. I'll be having to ask myself, am I doing it just to, prove a point to him now? Or, I mean, for goodness sakes, it was really extreme. And I could see, it's very clear that the problems that this guy has in his life, he's creating. Most of it. At least most of it. Very easy to see in him. If I engage in any of that, it's going to be a little harder for me to see it in myself, but seeing it so clearly in somebody else, if I really think about it more now, I might find that even I still do some of that sometimes. But how do you convince yourself, if you get caught up in that kind of thinking yourself over a long period of time, that it is realistic to change your attitude into a better one, no matter what? It takes some working. It takes some thinking through it. And it takes some practice with it. I think the thing that started to get me to turn around with it was when I realized that no matter how I thought that my thoughts have no power. So what negative thinking, positive thinking, expecting the worst or expecting the best, what difference does it make? I'm just going to be realistic. My thoughts don't create anything. That's what I thought. But then I started to realize they created me being angry all the time. And I was tired of being angry all the time. Tired of being depressed. Just constantly, triggered into angry responses over everything. Just constantly pissed off. That's the way I was. I didn't want to feel like that anymore. So I started to, try to change the way I was looking at things just to feel better. Well, it took a lot of work, but slowly, I started to be able to piece together how this stuff all works, the actual mechanics of it. One little piece at a time, like learning to play a musical instrument through life. One little bit of technique at a time. Every little bit of playing that musical instrument, every little piece of skill involved having been learned, concentrated on, focused on, and practiced over and over, bit by bit, over years. That is the way I pulled myself out of that kind of thinking into the material that I'm now presenting for you here in my entire YouTube channel. Bit by bit, piecing it all together, taking things that I already knew from other kinds of experiences in life, but having to bring them all together and see how they fit and see how they work and practice them little by little. And something else that my boss said to me today, he said, and it's because of you having screwed me over now, which, of course, as I've already explained, I haven't done. It hasn't happened. There's a complete contrivance in his mind that such a thing has happened. It hasn't. Oh, it still could. It's not going to. If I have my say in it, if I have any say in it at all in this world, he's going to get his money from me on time. But if he is going to get what he calls screwed over, it hasn't happened yet, but he's convinced that it has. Like, not even really in touch with reality over this. You know what I'm saying? Not even in touch with reality. I mean, he's convinced that something has happened that hasn't. Kind of like, me being convinced that right now my house is underwater. But it's not. Oh, it could be tomorrow. There could be a big flood. I mean, it could start raining so hard, right, that I could have a big flood in here. That could happen. It could happen. But it hasn't. It's not like that right now. But, if I was convinced that it's not just going to happen, but already did. Happening right now. You could probably say I'm not quite in touch with reality, right? Same kind of thing. But he added this. He said, and because of you, I will never, ever help somebody again for the rest of my life. Because of you. Trying to throw that on me. Over something that hasn't happened. So, trying to make me responsible for him now never helping anybody again for the rest of his life. Not realizing that he's doing that to himself. Now, this was another point I wanted to make. If you get so-called screwed over by people, is that a reason to no longer be nice and kind to people? Look at my boss, for example. He believes he's getting screwed over by me because of his niceness. Because it's the niceness he'll never do again. But if, in fact, I cannot pay him back if in fact he's right that he's not going to get his money. Starting with me going and getting another job somewhere. Is that because of him being nice and helpful in putting up the money for a vehicle? Was it because of that? No, had nothing to do with that. It's because of the way he treated me during my employment. All the negative stuff that drove me out of his employ. All the times that he told me I was useless or gave me that message that I was completely worthless to him and threatened my employment. Often, told me more than once, with his finger right up in my face, right up in my face, like this, telling me, like I'm a little kid, telling me that, he's about to fire me over stuff that just really was not completely coherent. That's the reason why I went and got another job. Has nothing to do with him having been helpful with the vehicle. But now he'll never be nice to somebody else because of me. Again, pointing the finger at me. Well, what's the message in that for you, everybody? If you are kind to people and you feel that you got stepped on by them, is that a good reason to no longer be kind to people? No. To draw that conclusion is to get sucked in to what we call, evil, bad thinking, negative thinking, to get lowered to low ideals, low standards, low vibrations, low whatever you want to call it, lower states of mind, to give up compassion for other people just because, your ego didn't get out of it the last time around what it thought it should get out of it. What about the whole string of karma? Cause and effect. Things that have taken place in the past that have to still be worked out. Perhaps they are getting worked out while you're being nice to somebody and somebody's so-called screwing you over at the same time, or maybe that person does not return the niceness in the way that you thought they should. Perhaps that's coming from something long ago that has to do with some course you set in motion long ago. No doubt that's exactly what's going on. Now, if you come to the decision, well, then I just won't be nice to anybody anymore. Now what have you set in motion for your future? From that point forward, even worse. Do you see what I'm getting at? We got to be able to step back, look at the bigger picture of how things happen and why they happen. And to come to some bizarre conclusion like being nice to people never pays off is only setting yourself up for even more hardship later. And probably similar conclusions in the past, long ago, of a similar nature, previous lifetimes, whatever, have led up to the circumstances that caused this stupid decision now to no longer be nice to people anymore for the rest of life. And blame someone else for it. And point right in their face saying it. Do I accept that blame? No. No. It's not mine. It's not mine. I got beyond that kind of thing some years ago, and I hope you did too. But when you are faced with that kind of thing, you do have to recognize that thought forms are flying around like crazy. And if you stoop mentally and emotionally to the level at which they exist, to any kind of mental state that is in correspondence or harmony with the state of mind that's producing them, then you will absorb them into your own aura, into your own sphere, they will become yours. And the circumstances that are feared by the other person or believed by the other person to already be in place, in other words, they are affirming them mentally, already happening. Well, as you know, all they have yet to do is materialize from that point. Now, if you fall into step with the same things, the results are pretty much inevitable. Because you have two people involved in the same kinds of thinking, the same kinds of thought forms, the same foregone conclusions, the same mental plane vibrations, the same astral plane vibrations. You're pretty much determining the result physically. Both of you. And especially since the interaction involves both of you. So, if you're faced with this kind of thing coming at you, you need to get away from it. Don't get close to it vibrationally, frequency-wise, for one thing. Don't absorb it. Don't let it in. Don't raise yourself. Don't lower yourself to that kind of thinking at all. Just see the thought forms, in fact, bouncing away and going back to their owner. Just going somewhere else. Intentionally create opposite ones. Make use of what you know about how to do this stuff. You know, your visualization, your mental images, your thought forms, your primary thought forms, your secondary thought forms, your knowledge of how they work, where they're going to go, what they're going to do, cause and effect, you know, the rhythm of things, polarity, shifting, the whole bit. You know, point of balance, the transmutation from a point of balance, all of this. Use it. Put it to work. Intentionally. Intend it to be like that. I don't want to have to bring up anybody specific here. You know? But it was a perfect example. Made it clear, right? Having somebody with this very, very clear example of this stuff at work. You know, I feel bad for the guy. I mean, the guy he's a struggle. He's an internal struggle, and he makes everybody around him struggle, and he happens to be the boss of about, I don't know, maybe 15 people, and, you know, some of them think he's great. And he is good with some people. Other people, is just a nightmare, a constant nightmare. And what people see in him is that he is walking around as a nightmare in his own mind. And unfortunately, you know, I ended up losing my job over it today. I hope my new job works out. I really do, folks. I'm thinking, you know, well about it. But I do hear this former boss's words ringing in my head. I mean, he was shouting them at me today. staring right at me, looking right in my eyes. I tried to avoid the eye contact. You know, eye contact during these kind of things is very important. If somebody, here's another clue, folks. It's true. If somebody is projecting these kinds of thought vibrations and thought forms in your direction, don't look into their eyes. Avoid that. It helps you avoid the rest. It's also the case that if you really want to impress thought vibrations and thought forms into somebody, get their eye contact and try to hold it. Don't use that indiscriminately. I'm telling it to you so that you can be aware of it when it's being done to you. Get away from the eye contact. Don't look into the person's eyes. A lot of transference takes place through the physical gaze, or when it is established. When that physical gaze connection is made, then other levels of connection easily fall into harmony with it. Well, today I saw it, I felt it, and it was repeated. This guy was convincing himself of it, and he was trying to convince me of it, and I swear to it, without him knowing it, he was doing a really good job of convincing the entire universe of it. And drawing the conclusion that because of me, he's no longer going to be helpful to anybody ever again. That's it. I've ruined him. And he believes that. And he's going to hold that, and he's going to act on it over something that never happened. It sounds like a person going crazy to me. Don't you let this happen to you. It's like only you can prevent forest fires. Don't you let this kind of thing happen to you. Don't think like that. Don't, come on, man. I don't have to tell you this, right? I mean, after all you know by now from the material here in this channel, you know better. But I understand how some people can get themselves into those situations and think like that and come to these horrible conclusions and create their self-fulfilling prophecies that aren't good. And then when they see the results, they take those results as proof that they were right in the first place. And so on, and so on, and so on. And it is an indication of, in large, how we build our worldview. No matter what it is. Why not make it one that pushes us or involves our personal evolution and the dissolution of our false egos? And that even involves a clearing away of the clutter that hides from us a clear view of the way things actually are. Be well.